Welcome to a special 6-part series from Talking Volumes, hosted by me, Reuben J. Brown.
And me, Euan Russell.
In 2019, we both made applications for degrees in architecture, receiving offers from universities including UCL's Bartlett School, Sheffield and Edinburgh. And in the autumn of 2020, we're both hoping to take up offers at Cambridge University.
In comparison to applying for most undergrad degrees, this is a pretty intensive process. And when we were going through it, we both struggled to find simple answers to some confusing questions.
Questions like, what should I apply for? And what should go in my portfolio? How should it be presented? Do I need work experience? Do I need to be able to draw? And how?
We know that if you're listening to this, you're excited about architecture and want the best chance to get into the best school for you.
So we've made this series, which will tell you everything you need to know about applying to study architecture in the UK from a student's perspective.
We've got 6 episodes covering where to start, what to apply for, writing a personal statement, making your portfolio, application drawing tasks, and finally what to expect at an interview.
You're listening to episode 4, Making Your Portfolio.
If you're applying to architecture school, you can almost guarantee that one of the courses you apply to will want to see a portfolio to get a sense of your ideas and how you work.
I submitted a digital portfolio to Sheffield and presented my physical portfolio to both UCL and Cambridge.
Yeah, and I also had to present a portfolio for UCL and Cambridge, who both had drawing tasks as well. But we'll talk about those in our next episode.
I think the portfolio can be quite a daunting thing to put together, and probably the thing I spent the most time and effort on in my application. Really a lot of time and effort.
Yeah, it's hard to know what they want to see in a portfolio and what of your work is going to make the best impression. With the personal statement, you've probably already had to write in that style before, like if you've applied for part-time work or some sort of student leadership role at your school, but creating your portfolio could be a totally new thing.
Yeah, I had no idea how to present my artwork in this way, particularly for the physical ones. I'd never compiled all my best work, linked it all together, and explained the most important parts of my artistic practice. I had no idea how to do it.
If you're applying for architecture from an art foundation course, then you probably know a lot about this already, but might also have a lot more work to display and need to narrow it down more. So we hope this episode will still be helpful for you.
We're going to explain what we now know from putting our own portfolios together, seeing lots of others both online and in real life, and speaking with admissions tutors and interviewers at the UK's best architecture schools.
We're going to take you through what kind of work to put in your portfolio, the considerations of a digital portfolio, which may become a lot more common in the post-COVID world, and then move on to the big physical portfolios you take to interviews, how to present different types of work in that form, how to order your work and tell a story about yourself and your art through presenting the portfolio to interviewers.
First up, what work do I put in this thing anyway?
Well, most universities don't really offer much guidance on this question, and that's a good thing. They want to see you take the initiative and show your unique individual viewpoint on the world through the work you show them.
This means using a variety of media and choosing to use an artistic medium not just because you're comfortable in it, but because it's the best tool to convey the ideas behind your work.
This could be any of the traditional forms of drawing, sculpture, collage, painting, printmaking, or more modern techniques like filmmaking, animation, sound art, and installation.
I had a large and very varied back catalogue of photography, some of which I used in my portfolio, but I was very careful about what I chose to present, choosing my street photography and light painting, which showed how I think about a city, time, and space, and pushed photography into some experimental areas over my more traditional portraiture.
Yeah, like if you have one medium that you work in pretty exclusively, then it's good to show how you really push at the edges of that medium and use it to express challenging ideas. You're not applying for a fine art course, and the universities aren't looking for you to totally perfect one technique like oil painting, for example.
It's still cool if you can paint like Caravaggio, but architecture courses...
Yeah, it is cool as hell to be able to paint like Caravaggio. The guy's sick.
Okay, cool. But architecture courses want to see a variety of work too, and if you've been doing A-level art or an art foundation course, this is kind of counter to what you're told with regards to achieving a good grade. You know, in an A-level, you're sometimes pushed to find your medium and then work within it and perfect it. But this portfolio is more about whether you're able to express your ideas through your art effectively and experiment with a range of media.
And to do that, it's really great to show preparatory work. Little sketches, notes, test pieces, all the work leading up to the pieces you're displaying. Because it shows how you're thinking and how an idea becomes a physical work of art in your practice.
You don't have to do this for every piece, and we have some guidance on how to incorporate it into your portfolio later, but we particularly recommend it if you're working in a limited range of media.
This also brings us on to something a lot of universities mention in their guidance. They like to see work you've done outside of school or college, so work you've made because it felt important to you to make it, and not because you wanted a grade.
That could be life drawing classes, graphic design work, photography, but if we're honest, most of our best work is likely to come from the classroom because that's where we have the most time to work on it. Euan, you told me you got asked in an interview about what the difference was between your in-school work versus your out-of-school work, and I really liked your answer.
Yeah, I said that I like to see the work I make in school as, well, it's good if it helps me get a good grade, but that's not why I'm making it. I'm tailoring the A-level course to allow me to make the work that I find important anyway.
And I think we can probably all agree that our best artwork is made when we're not just doing it for the grade.
Yeah, that was like our main point in the making part of episode 1. Make work you're passionate about and break the rules to do it.
So a final question, architectural work, should you include it? Maybe if you've done some work experience or a summer school or have incorporated architectural design into your artistic practice, should you put it in your portfolio?
Well, yeah, but with a couple of important caveats. In most portfolio guidance from unis, it says something like, we're not concerned with any specifically architectural work, and there's really good reasons for this.
Yeah, they are going to teach you how to design. They are going to teach you how to use CAD modeling software. You don't need to show them you have any experience with these things. And really, they'd rather you didn't have any ingrained ideas of how to design before you show up at architecture school. They also don't want to disadvantage anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to get work experience or go to a summer school.
So this means that if you've got CAD work in Rhino, Revit, SketchUp, floor plans, elevations, sections, then it's probably best to leave them out.
And if you don't know what those words mean, you really don't need to. Don't worry about it.
This is for a couple of reasons. One, they're sometimes not the most interesting things to look at. And 2, you're probably not even going to touch any CAD software in your undergrad until the second year. So while it's really cool if you can use it, it's not an expectation.
From the architecture department's perspective, it's a you gotta walk before you can run kind of thing. They want you to understand space in physical media through drawing and model making before you transfer those skills to digital environments. But what are some good reasons to include architectural work?
Well, if you've made some really strong physical models, those can be good to show. We both had work from the Bartlett summer school, which we included for this reason.
Or if you've thought about architectural pavilions as a bridge between sculptural art and the built environment in your artistic practice, this can be really interesting too, and show how you think of space as an experience.
If you've got really spatial work, or feel like blurring the lines between art and architectural work, then that's really interesting too. At this point, you're going to compile all the art you've made in the last few years so you can make a selection of what to include.
If you've tried out drawing a map of all your work, like we talked about in episode 1, then that would be really, really useful right now. And if you haven't done that yet, it's still a great exercise. You can use David Nash's artwork Family Tree as an example, in which he draws how all of his work is linked together.
You could also take a picture of every final piece of art you've made and print them out at a small scale. You can then lay these pictures out on a table and shuffle them around to think about how you're going to group and order the work.
Doing this is great. You can make notes on the back of each of the photos about why it's a strong work for your portfolio, what you'd want to say about it in an interview, and whether there's preparatory work you have that you'd want to display with it.
This method of self-curation will also be really, really useful if you're ever presenting your work for an exhibition or making a book about your art. It's a really visual way of storyboarding your artwork.
When you're going through this compilation of work and deciding what you're going to include, I think it's really important to follow similar editing guidelines to those we laid out in the last episode.
Yeah, working collaboratively here is really important. Get other people to look through what you propose to include. You might find that there's one work that people think just feels a little bit flat in comparison to the others, and they might be able to suggest something else instead.
A friend and I were actually helping another friend, Billy, put some work together for his foundation end of year show the other week, and we both felt that these painting studies he included weren't adding any new ideas or skills to what he had already. So we went back to the compilation of all the work he had from the year and decided to put some photography in instead.
And that shows more variety in his practice, and might not have been an idea he would have thought about without other people being involved.
Exactly. But how should we decide on how to order and present that work? What should we be thinking about when we're doing this?
Well, for the rest of this episode, we're going to discuss some different formats of the portfolio and how to design your portfolio to be personal and really effective at conveying how you use creative media.
First off, we're going to talk about digital portfolios.
I wasn't actually asked for a digital portfolio for any of the places I applied to. And Reuben, you just did one for Sheffield. But with the current outlook regarding COVID-19, it's pretty likely that more universities will move towards this format.
Yeah, we're recording this in July 2020, so there's still a lot of uncertainty here. I think UCL and Cambridge will still have interviews, but we'll really be questioning whether they need to be done in person.
And once universities figure out how to interview remotely, they might never go back. So digital presentation in some form could become standard. And thinking about how we present in this way might become much more important. At the moment, Sheffield, Manchester, UAL, and many others have a digital portfolio as part of their application process. So what do these look like, and how do we face them?
For my Sheffield portfolio, at least, I was asked for 10 sheets, they called them. Each sheet could include one or multiple images, and one of the sheets had to be a response to the theme, Your Street, in any medium accompanied by 200 words of writing. I was given 4 weeks to complete the portfolio, and it had to be still images, so I could not include video work, animation, or sound work of any capacity. So when I was given this brief, I tried to think about the limitations of it, and also about areas where I could bend the rules, as we said a lot. Personally, I've got some graphics experience, and I'm pretty comfortable in Adobe InDesign, so I wanted the format of my digital portfolio to be really clean and effective at displaying the work, and impressive in its own right. This suited my style of work, but it might not be how you want to tackle it, so work in a way that suits you, of course. If you hate working on computers to display your work, we've got a couple of tips that should help. First, use a plain black or white background on all your pages. I used a white background for drawing and a black background for sculpture and photography.
Second, choose one sans serif font for your entire document. For Mac or iPad, Helvetica Neue and Futura are included and great. On Windows, Arial is your best bet. But if you're doing this on a personal computer and not at school, consider downloading a free alternative like Quicksand or Able from Google Fonts.
Third, keep all titles and text small and in the same size and place on every page. Give maximum focus to your images and not to the text. These 3 tips will make sure the design of your portfolio isn't distracting from the work, which is of course the most important part. And you can see how I've used these techniques on this episode's page on our website, talkingvolumes.co.uk.
This is also a good time to talk about photographing your sculptures, which will be important for physical portfolios too, as you won't be able to bring them with you to the interview. The basic principles are exactly the same. Use a completely black or white background and give it as much light as possible.
Almost all the photos of sculptures in my portfolio were shot on the old iPhone SE at college. You really don't need a good camera to make the work look good, just a plain background and lots of light. We're going to recommend using big sheets of A1 paper for your physical portfolio, and you can tape one of these to the wall and put another on top of a table pushed up against it, then get any big directional light sources available to you, and voila, home photo studio.
And if your work is really, really big, then you could take photos of it outside and really consider the architectural or natural surroundings and how they interact with the work through photography. This will show yet another layer of thinking through your art.
I also used a little bit of Photoshop to clean up and simplify the images. Mainly it just involves getting a little part of the image fully black and a little part of the image fully white, so there's appropriate contrast. And you can do this on your phone's built-in photo editor. But consider what's important in the sculpture. If it's mainly about shape and form, consider using black and white. Use photography as a tool to direct the viewer towards the part in the piece that are the most important, and away from the parts that you're not so happy with.
So, what did you include in your 10 sheets?
The first 4 were sculptures, number 5 was some light drawing photography, number 6 was 2 street photographs, 7 and 8 were examples of graphic design and photography work, number 9 was an array of life drawing, and number 10 was a drawing response to the Your Street prompt. For each of the sheets, I included up to 50 or 60 words on the techniques and materials I used, but looking back, I really think I should have used these captions to explain more about the ideas behind the work, because they can see the techniques and materials. The ideas are much more important. I wouldn't include much more than 50 words per page though. The person viewing your portfolio doesn't have much time, and you want the images to speak for themselves as much as possible. My 4 sheets on sculpture were varied and showed the different ways I was pushing at the medium, but I think the 2 pages of my graphics work didn't build upon each other, and just one would have shown the same thing. I think my Sheffield portfolio looked really good, and I did get an offer from it, so we have uploaded it as an example, but I think I definitely made some mistakes with it, and spent a lot less time on it than I did my UCL and Cambridge physical portfolio. I would recommend including more evidence of preparatory work than I did, and discuss more ideas with your work. I think the first 3 sculptures I presented have a lot of thinking behind them, but the 4th was more of a solely aesthetic object, and I don't think the graphics work I presented really showed anything beyond skills, which I was showing with the design of the portfolio itself. This was the first portfolio I made though, at the end of October, so really early in the year. By the time I was doing the Cambridge and UCL physical portfolios, I had loads of new work I was lots more excited about, and removed half of the pieces I put in the Sheffield one.
Yeah, and for me, if I was asked for a digital portfolio, I probably would have just taken good photographs of all the pages in my physical one.
And I think that's a perfectly valid way to do it, especially if working with digital graphics design stuff is going to be frustrating or take a lot of time for you.
Yeah, like maybe if you're spending loads of time on your physical portfolio already, it doesn't make sense to redesign all of it for a digital space.
Yeah, and maybe if my Sheffield deadline was after my Cambridge deadline, I might have done it that way. but I think my work probably benefited from being presented with a digital environment in mind.
But yeah, like really you can choose how you want to work. Let's move on to the physical portfolio then.
When I was putting mine together, I just didn't know how they wanted work to be presented, what the format was, any of that. It's just something no one really tells you.
Yeah, I felt totally the same, but we did find out some stuff through sort of talking to people like our teachers and our friends. And there's no reason you have to present work in this way, and we both partially went outside of this format. But the core of most portfolios is a set of big A1 sheets of paper with photos of work or the physical pieces themselves spray mounted on.
And PSA to use spray mount and not use Pritt stick, use spray mount. It's way better.
The reason that the standard for portfolios is A1 sheets is that they allow you to have a clear order and structure to the presentation of your portfolio.
Because you have to present them one at a time in an order, it allows you to tell a story with your work, connecting pieces or showing preparatory work on the first sheet, and then the final piece in all its glory on the second, for example.
Yeah, when I was making my portfolio, I actually thought it was going to be really easy at first. Like I thought I was just going to get my best work together and throw it in an A1 case. But I then realized how hard this would be to actually present at interview because I just have loads of loose pieces of work floating around and it would be hard to order and structure my presentation. So I decided to split my work into the themes that it dealt with and dedicate some A1 sheets to each theme. I tried to make each of these sheets include a big range of work, like drawings, often the actual ones stuck on, sketchbook pages, usually photocopied, but I did bring the sketchbooks they came from along with me, photos of sculptures and larger drawings, collage and photo montage work, screenshots from animations, and so on. One of my sheets was just a big photo of loads of work pinned up on the wall, like you might do at a crit or a review at architecture school. I still included most of this work in physical form, but it was also nice to have it presented in an order like this to show process. Arranging things physically in this way was really helpful for planning what I would focus on at interview and nailing the right layout. When it came to presentation, I at first filled one of the sheets with loads of work and it looked really lively and energetic. But then I stepped away from it and realized that while it made a nice overall effect, it was kind of too cluttered. There wasn't anywhere for the eye to rest, so you couldn't really focus on individual pieces of work properly. So I decided to split all of this work onto two A1 sheets, which is still comfortably filled, putting preparatory drawings and sketchbook images on one page and photos of the model making process on another. This was way more visually effective and actually left some space for adding notes if I wanted to later.
And this core of work that you've put together in these A1 sheets is big, and if you're interviewing in person, you're going to need something to carry this. You can get fancy cases for upwards of £50 or plastic sleeves for 15, but add that to A1 art paper and spray mount, plus travel costs to the university, and it can get quite expensive.
So use your school or college's supplies as much as you can get away with. Your teachers want to help you and will definitely give you support and advice, as well as materials for presenting your work.
Okay, let's talk about some of the other ways you could present work in your portfolio. You had some animation you wanted to show. How did you do that?
Well, in my A1 portfolio, I had stills from the animation showing a kind of structure and then had the video itself ready to show on my phone. And I thought my phone was just going to open on the video, but I think it went off the screen or something, so I actually had to spend a while and find the video, which was kind of awkward, but it was actually okay because of another very important part of the portfolio.
Yes, the sketchbook. So your interviewer just flicked through your sketchbooks while you were finding the video?
Yeah, exactly. I think they actually quite liked the opportunity, to be honest. Having a rugged, used sketchbook with you just on the table first shows how sketching is a frequent part of your practice, which they really like to see, and can be something for the interviewer to flick through if you need a minute to get a bit of work out.
I take a lot more photographs than I draw. I did photography GCSE and then moved to fine art for A-level, and I was trying to work out a way to present that work effectively. I split the work into 6 separate projects and then designed and printed an A5 zine for each of them.
And that is a similar thing to having loads of sketchbooks, because you use photography as a visual tool for thinking. And you've chosen to present it not as crafted images, but as a series of photos that build into a continuing practice. It gives the person looking at your portfolio more of a window into your day-to-day practice and shows that you're constantly observing.
Exactly. The message here is to present the work in a way that makes sense for the media used and the ideas it covers. And for your main body of fine art work, the A1 sheets will probably be a good choice to make.
So now we know how to present the work, let's think about the order of the work and how you're actually going to go through it.
You're going to have at most only 20 minutes to present your work, which goes way faster than you think it will. So it's really important to think about the order in which you present your work.
We both ran out of time to present everything, so we really recommend putting your best/favorite work at the beginning. Make a great impression with something exciting that tells them about you. The chronology of your work is also something you can consider, but it doesn't have to be in chronological order, especially if you're most excited about what you've done most recently, like Reuben and I were. It's still good to think about how your ideas might have built upon one another and show the interviewer this process.
My first sheets were a series of big A1 ink drawings of shells from the beach. Each successive sheet went further from very expressive abstract marks to more form-finding drawings, which then became design drawings made in pencil, which then became maquettes and composite images of a design for a sculptural pavilion space, which had come from these first really abstract drawings, which in turn led on to other sculptures I had made around the sea and the beach.
Yeah, and that sounds like a really effective way to show the development of your ideas. Ordering your work in this way shows how you think visually, how loose sketches can form into more structured ideas. It also makes your presentation flow really well, like you're telling a story about your artwork.
And the other side of putting your best work at the front is putting what might be less important work at the back. We both had Bartlett summer school work in our portfolios, but we both left it to the end.
Okay, now we know the order we're going to present the work in. Have a think about what you're going to say for each piece. Once all your sheets are together and ready, ask a teacher if you can practice going through it with them.
All art teachers have done lots of portfolio presentations, so they will know the kind of questions you might get asked, giving you some practice on speaking about your work clearly. If you can't get a teacher, find someone else. Just running through it a couple of times will help either way.
When you're doing this, it's important to think of how long you're giving the interviewer to view each sheet. I think in my presentations, I might actually have sometimes been moving on too quickly, so try to be guided by the interviewer and figure out whether they want more time and if there's more you can say on a piece. They'll be trying to pull as much out of you as they can.
And if this means you have to slow down and miss some pieces at the end, just make sure you won't be missing anything really important, and don't worry.
Yeah, it's a good sign if the interviewer wants more time looking at a piece. It means that it's probably interested them.
Just don't structure your portfolio as if it all builds up to this one big defining conclusion work, and you'll be fine.
Okay, let's wrap this up. There's a lot to think about here, but here are the 5 main takeaways.
1, you can put any type of work in your portfolio, but universities like to see a variety of media.
If you work pretty exclusively in one medium, show how you push at its edges and make sure you have lots of preparatory work included.
2, universities aren't looking for specifically architectural work.
That doesn't mean you can't include it, but if you do, make sure it shows deeper thinking or a specific skill.
They're definitely not too bothered by the CAD drawings you've made at work experience.
3, digital portfolios might become a lot more important post-COVID.
Here's 3 tips for designing them. Use a plain white or black background. Use just one sans serif font and keep text small and in the same place on every sheet.
Rolling in at number 4.
The standard for physical portfolios.
Number 4. The standard with physical portfolios is A1 sheets with images and drawings and stuff like that spray mounted on.
That doesn't mean it's the only way to present your work, and certain media might work better in other formats.
And don't forget to bring sketchbooks.
And then finally, number 5, put your best work at the start.
Think about what you want to say about each piece as you're presenting, and try to get some time in to practice with a teacher.
And finally, number 5, put your best work at the start.
Think about what you want to say about each work as you're presenting, and try to get some time in to practice with a teacher or anyone else who'll listen.
And when you're thinking about what you're going to say about each work, try not to fall in the trap of just talking about your process. Make sure you're properly explaining the ideas behind your work, because that's likely to be what's most important.
All right, those are our main tips to help you make a really great portfolio.
The next episode is all about drawing tasks, and in episode 6, we talk everything interview.
This episode of Talking Volumes was produced remotely in Durham by me, Euan Russell.
And in Brighton by me, Reuben J. Brown.
If you've got any questions, have a great episode idea, or want to get in touch for any other reason, you can email us at talkingvolumespod@gmail.com or send us a message on Instagram or Twitter at Talking Volumes.
If you want to refer back to the things we talked about today, you can find a quick summary at the episode's page on our website, talkingvolumes.co.uk.
And if you want to help our show reach more people, you can drop us a review on whatever service you're listening to and recommend us to a friend.
Until next time, keep paying attention to the architecture all around you.
See you in episode 5, which is all about drawing tasks.